So what I'm going to do today is kind of go over some of the science behind the redox molecules, and I'm backing it up with scientific research that I have been involved in and have seen myself. What I'm going to do is I'll show a short video, talk about some of the scientists, and my wife has told me to keep this short and sweet, but I've done this presentation with actually Dr. Gary Samuelson himself, and it was a long. I have shortened it down so that we can just kind of focus on what the science is, and we'll talk about a few of the athletes and go from there. Okay. So what I want to do is talk about athletic performance at the cellular level. This is not something that's been done before, and makes me really excited because athletic performance is at the cellular level. You don't have healthy cells, you don't have a healthy athlete, and you don't have an athlete that can perform. What I'm going to talk about has been backed up by scientific research. Dr. David Neiman, which we talked about last week, has actually done some other tests that I'm not going to go today, but some of his information has backed up what I'm going to talk about today. So I really highly recommend checking in to Dr. David Neiman. He is the North Carolina Institute. He's backed up. He's done a lot of research with athletes themselves, and he's a good resource. Also, Dr. Robinson Ward and Dr. Gary Samuelson, who stabilized the redox single molecules, is the person, and then that's backed up by these universities that I'm going to be talking about. So what I'm talking about today is backed by scientific research by these different universities and these different professors and doctors. And now I'm going to show just a short video. I don't know if you guys have seen it, but it's just part of this presentation. So I'm going to put it quick. Hopefully the sound does come through. Again, what we're going to be talking about is scientific research. It's been tested in the labs, and so it's backed up by the universities and the talked about. Can you guys see all that okay? Thumbs up. Good. Okay.
We can be broken down.
Shawn, if you can share the audio, because we can
be reduced
hear
to
the
a
audio.
system. Muscles test every breath.
Ahí mejor.
Opposition challenges our strength, our belief, our desire, and we push back. We use that resistance to build strength. We use it to build stamina. We use it to understand ourselves. We use it to make setbacks our launch pads and obstacles our stepping stones. Ours is a story of recovery, of being broken down to rise up stronger, of turning stress to strength. This is more than a story of fitness. This is the story of life itself. We embrace the breakdown to enhance the buildup. We do it on hillsides, in the pool, and down city streets. We do it through fortitude, through ingenuity, and undeniably through our biology. Our cells are performance structures. While we're talking about our day, our cells are talking to each other, building, renewing, regenerating. At ASEA, this is what we know. This is what we do. So you can maintain the miracle of your body and know what you're made of. We all get broken down, and each of us faces the choice to surrender or rise up stronger.
So what we've learned is that the cells are made in redox molecules. So there is a nucleus within a cell, and around that cell is redox molecules. And that is important for a cell to survive because we talk about communication with the cell. So within a bottle of ASEA, we have thousands of redox single molecules. When you drink the ASEA product, redox This is what's actually in the bottle. It's submerged. These are redox molecules that are actually in the bottle. There's thousands of those within a bottle of ASEA. And once we drink that ASEA molecules, then we send out a message to our cells. So it's the communication of the cells to actually do their function within the body. And it creates an energy between those cells. And I don't know, it's been my experience, but when I drink ASEA, I actually get hungry if I take it on an empty stomach. And the reason for that is because there's energy. Once you drink the redox molecules, that communication starts between cells, and then it causes energy between those cells to communicate. I don't know if you guys have had that experience or not. For me, if I drink it in the morning, I actually get more hungry. And that's because that's how I know that it's actually working within my body. In order to do that, the molecules have to actually go through the cell membrane. And once it goes through the cell membrane, so this is a picture of it actually going through the cell membrane, then goes around the nucleus of the cell. See that spinning is that's the communication of the redox molecules talking to the nucleus cell so that the cell can activate and do its function, which is, we'll go into what the functions of the cell are. We know that cell communication is a key factor to our body and is the most complex. We also know that communication network, if we don't have cells that communicate, we know that the cells can't do what their function is. And that may be, the heartbeat, it may be the kidney function, it may be the immune system and things, and we'll go into the genetic pathways. We also know that the cells have to detect, repair, and replace. And so this is actually a video of cells that are detecting and then determine if they need to replace or repair that cell. When we drink the redox molecules, this is actually what happens within our cells to actually communicate with our cells. It also will protect our cells. So the top part where you see protection, these are healthy cells that are being regenerated. So we know that we have to break down the cells and then we have to regenerate the cells. So this is kind of a good visual of how it actually works within our body. What I'm going to go into now is Dr. Keith Ward is a doctor who actually did some genetic pathway research. I'm going to go on how he actually did that. So the scientific research that Dr. Ward did was a genetic research. And what it did is it found out that it unlocked genetic pathways. There's 5 genetic pathways that actually unlocked. What really got me excited about this is these genetic pathways by being activated is what actually makes it more efficient and can perform at a higher level. So the study was each participant drank 4 ounces of ASEA twice a day. So that's 8 ounces. So that's 8 ounces of ASEA that they took per day. They also had the participants after that or before that is they drew blood on each of the clients to determine what their genetic pathways were, which ones were unlocked and which ones were what we call dormant. So blood being drawn. And we found out that the genetic expression levels were then tested after they were taken within this study. So they actually drew blood before, they drew blood during the test, and they drew blood after the test. And that's how they came up with the genetic pathways that they actually locked. The other thing is that they actually had participants that it was a double-blinded placebo test, meaning that the participants didn't know if they were taking ASEA or if they were just taking saline water. And so the participants themselves, when they gave back the information, they didn't know if they were given information on what if they were drinking ASEA or if they were drinking placebo, which was actually form. And this is what they found out when they were taking the placebo effects, and you can see on the bottom where they had no difference or no activation in their genetic pathways. And then with ASEA, they actually saw results. And here are the results that they saw. 20 to 31% benefit from the exchange of genetic pathways, which we'll go over here in a minute. And it was stabilized, meaning that they tested them at 2 weeks, 3, 4 weeks, 6 weeks, and 8 weeks, and they saw a gradual increase. And then the ones who stayed on the ASEA continue to see those genetic pathways unlocked. The ones that actually stopped taking ASEA, they saw a decrease, so the genetic pathways actually went back to being in a state. So let's go over definitions. So genes are within our cells, and is the nucleus, the cell, brain. So we know that there has to be a brain within a cell. Contains information about specific functions of that cell. Again, I talked about that. It could be a heartbeat, it could be inflammation, it could be digestive, it could be immune system. The cells that we know actually have their own workload that they do. So there's heart cells, which we know about. There are kidney cells, there's brain cells. So each cell is, one cell is not the same. In each part of the body, each cell has a function and each cell is specific. And this information contains in genetics there's DNA coding. So there's an actual mechanism that cell is coded for a DNA activation. And then the process by which genes directly cell function. So we know that's a genetic expression, that's what it means. So I'm just going over this because these are different definitions that came up with the study, and that backs it up. The Dr. Ward's test was valid. So we know that, again, that the cell or the redox molecules has to pass through the cell membrane, and then it activates the nucleus, which is the brain of that cell. This has become a little bit more clear on how the actual product works and how the test was done. By doing this, we know that it unlocks the genetic pathways within our body. So again, there's a lot of genetic pathways. What we discovered, or what Dr. Ward discovered with this test, that there was 5 genetic pathways that actually unlocked. So molecules actually unlock digestive enzyme signaling pathways. So the digestive system was unlocked, meaning it made it more efficient. And one of the things that we found out, that it actually detoxed, it got all the bad chemicals out of the body. So drinking the molecules then was able to go into the digestive system and get all the toxins out of the system itself. So you can see how that works in the body. I'll show that again. So drinking the molecules then goes into the digestive system and then clears out the detox or the bad stuff within our system. So having a good digestive system, we know, makes an athlete more efficient because we're getting the right type of fuel within our body, or the different parts of our body that we need in order to compete at a higher level. But also genetic pathways that unlock with inflammation pathways. So athletes are constantly having inflammation within the body, not just in, could be an elbow, could be muscle soreness, could be inflammation within their digestive system. So this study showed that inflammation pathway was actually activated to be more efficient. We also know that it unlocked the immune system pathway. So people who have poor immune systems, which we know, actually get sicker more. I've actually been on the product for a little over 10 years, and I've only had once in that 10 years. Before getting on redox single molecules, ASEA, I was getting a cold probably 3 or 4 times a year. So my immune system is actually more efficient, which allows me to be able to compete at a higher, or be able to do back-to-back workouts at a higher level, not deplete my immune system. So that was something that a genetic pathway that unlocked within me that made me more even though I was older. And then the vascular single impasse. What we found out is that the elasticity with the vascular system became more efficient. So if we have a vascular system which isn't pliable or doesn't have the elasticity or the actual movement, then it's not as efficient. But if we have veins and arteries that become more pliable or more, when I say more efficient, which is the, I forgot the word I'm using now, but it becomes more efficient because the elasticity within the system is actually able to push more blood through the system, which actually makes it more efficient. So if we have an athlete whose heart rate is lower, but is actually able to pump more blood to the system, then the athlete becomes more. So the takeaway on the test was we talked about it unlocked the digestive health or digestive system on the genetic pathways, inflammation, the hormone modification, cardiovascular health, and also the immune system.
Any document?
No.
That's nothing. It's nothing. It's because they are recording. I'm sorry, what?
Are you guys still there? Because I can't see your photos. Are we still good?
Yeah, we're
Okay.
here.
So I'm going to talk about real quick about Renew 28. So there has been scientific research by the Bio Institute of North Carolina that showed that using ASEA, or I'm sorry, Redox Renew 28, that it increases blood flow by 49% within 15 minutes of first time. And then it also is at 55% blood flow after 96 hours if you apply it twice a day. So again, we talked about that last week, that using increased blood flow and leads to the quads, lats, in different parts of the body actually increases blood flow, which actually helps with the immune system and getting the proper blood supply to the areas that are needed. We know that we have increased blood flow to an area. So by applying it tropical or on the surface area, we're actually increasing blood flow to the area. So these are actually red blood cells that are actually being activated by using Renew 28. The other thing is that by using increasing blood flow or red blood cells, what it allows is the white blood cells not to be clumped together in a big clump. So the more separated those are, the more efficient white blood cells are to the area, because we also know that having increased white blood cells to an area help with keeping inflammation and the antioxidants that we'll talk about in a few minutes here. And so again, increased red blood cells, increased white blood cells makes a person more healthier, makes an athlete more efficient, because now we're getting the nutrients that they actually digest into the proper areas of the bodies that we can utilize for fuel. So we just talked about is unlocking the genetic pathways within our body. So now I'm just going to talk about a couple of these athletes that are actually using the product, what the results are, and why these athletes actually got better by taking redox molecules and Renew 28. So Dexter Yates is she's now 75 years old, and who found ASEA at a point when she was trying to actually start doing Ironman competition, which we talked about last week. So Ironman competition consists of a 2.4-mile swim, followed by a 112-mile bike, and then a 26.2-mile run, which is a marathon. Since being on the product, Dexter in the last year has won our age group 12 times. He has been on ASEA and has qualified for 12 world championships. He is actually a world champion at her age level. So here's a before and after picture when Dexter came to our facility or came to me. You can see that on the left-hand side, she was 30 pounds overweight and was not able to work out. And this picture that's on the right is actually, I think that was taken probably 2 years ago. So she's actually more fit now than she was then, but she actually lost 30 pounds. So why did it work for Dexter? So when Dexter came to us, she wasn't taking redox molecules. She wasn't working out efficiently. So she had an imbalance in her redox molecules. So what we started doing is getting her on the molecules, get her to start to drink the molecules. So again, these are the molecules within the body. It then pass through the cell membrane. Then it activated. So we talked about the genetic pathways. So if she was actually, her genetic pathways weren't unlocked, they were actually dormant. So activating those genetic pathways by single, she had to had cells that needed to be repaired and replaced because she had been inactive. She wasn't working out. And when she was working out, she was sore all the time. So we had to reverse that process so that we had more redox molecules within our body. So we had to get what we call homeostasis. We had to actually get her to be balanced. So if you saw that picture before, she had an imbalance, and then we actually balanced the redox molecules. Then that's when she was able to start working out. Instead of 1 hour a day, she was working out. Now she's up to working out 3 to 4 hours a day. Sometimes she'll work out 8 hours a day. And then she's able to come back and do that type of workout again. So that the first part was the homeostasis, which is the balance of redox molecules within her system. The other thing is that we found out by doing the research by Dr. David Neiman that it actually increases the availability of free fatty acids. It spares the muscle glycogen, which is the input of sugar within the muscle tissue, which we don't want. We actually want free fatty acids because those are the most efficient fuel. The other thing is that it was able to decrease lactic acid buildup. So that was the soreness. So the more lactic acid buildup we have, the more soreness we have. And allowed Dexter to increase her endurance. Here's actually redox molecules going to a fatty tissue molecule and then breaking it up into free fatty acids. So by breaking it up into free fatty acids into smaller particles, the body is able to digest and use those particles more efficiently so that endurance athlete is now being more efficient. What we found out by using this again, what we found out by using the free fatty acids that an athlete actually, that's why Dexter can race 14 to 16 hours at a time compared to someone else who was just doing sugar fuel. They only can race maybe an hour to 90 minutes at the most, and then they're bonk. So this allowed, and Dr. David Neiman found out that by drinking redox molecules, that the body actually is being more efficient in using the free fatty acids. And this is actually molecules going into the bloodstream and actually taking out the free fatty acids and getting it into the fuel system or to use it for fuel. And then this is a research that I did on Dexter. I actually have a device that actually can measure. So here's when she was 69 years old or 70 when she came to me, and then we did a test again in 3 years, and I'm going to show you this test. So the test on the left and the test on the right. And as you can see, when she came to me, when we put her on this device, we were able to measure her percentage of body fat, her mass, her fat mass, her muscle mass, and also body and water weight, and her metabolic. And as you can see, when she was not taking the product, she weighed 160 pounds. And then 2 years later, after being on the product, her weight was down to 154. Her fat percentage was 43%. And 2 years later, she's actually less now, but this is actually a test done 2 years after being on the product. We got her fat down to 35% or 32%. And here's one of the best things that I've seen is muscle mass. She was at 87 pounds of muscle. And as you can see, after being on the product for 2 years, she actually gained 11 pounds of muscle. So she actually had 98 pounds of muscle. Her body weight. So what we found out is if you decrease fat within the body actually absorbs more fluids. And so you can see where her total body weight was 64. We actually increased it to 72 pounds, which means she was able to absorb more fluids, which is what we need for athletes to be more efficient. So if they absorb less body fat and more muscle, because we know that muscle is made of water. Fat is a solid substance, so that does not allow the body to absorb as much water and nutrients. And then you can see that when she was actually 69 years old, her metabolic age was 78. So she was actually older than she was because of the increase in percentage of body fat, and muscle mass was low. But then when we retested her again, her metabolic age was actually 57. And this is when she was 73 years old. So at 73 years old, her metabolic age actually was 57. So she actually was getting younger by being on this, by using redox molecules. So this is a machine that I'm actually able to put clients on, and then I can measure what the percentage of body fat, muscle mass, and what their metabolic age is. And this machine that I have, it's about $5,000, and it's a medical machine, so it's not something that you buy at Walmart or something like that. So with Dexter again, that we increased her vascular output, we increased her digestive system, and here's Dexter.
This ain't a song for the broken hearted. A silent prayer for faith departed. I ain't gonna be just a face in the crowd. You're gonna hear my voice when I shout it out loud. It's my life, it's now.
And Dexter's, like I said, she's a world champion. She's actually won the world championships several times. This is a picture of her in 2018, and these are all the medals and trophies that she won during that year. And she was 72. She's now, or 73. She's now 75. And then actually last week, she just got a letter from the World Championship Federation that she is now again ranked #1 in the world in her age group. Okay, so are you guys still with me? Are we still doing good?
Yeah, we're here.
Okay, this is good stuff. Is this what you guys wanted?
Sorry?
Is this what you guys were looking for? Is this good?
I mean, for me, it's amazing. Ruben, what do you think?
I was writing
Okay.
here questions and things.
Let's go on to the next thing here.
Okay, let me see.
Okay, so this is, we'll talk about what it's done for me. So I was an Army Ranger in Panama and then got out of the service and was competing in triathlons. And I'm 62 years old now. I've been on the product a little over 10 years. 10 years ago, I wasn't even able to work out 5 hours per week. And now I'm racing, and now I was able to race my 18th and 19th. And since I've been on the product, I've raced 67 races in the last 10 years. I won 65 of those races and placed. Me, I started drinking this is an after picture. So this is me in 2005, and this is me in 2016. The reason I show this picture is that when I was racing back in 2005, I was actually living off ibuprofen. And so that's how I got through all my workouts, because the pain was so severe that using ibuprofen, which I found out by Harvard University, by taking ibuprofen, it actually decreases the blood flow within the body. Somebody's got their mic open.
Luego, mientras que se baña el pavo, sigues tú.
Someone's mic's open. Good. Okay. So this is so living off ibuprofen, my body was actually, and then we found out that the muscle actually is not being efficient. It actually decreases muscle output or power output by 50%. So by getting off ibuprofen, starting to take redox single molecules, I was actually becoming more efficient at my athletic ability, and not knowing that I was actually decreasing my output by living off ibuprofen. So I got off ibuprofen. The other thing is that oxidative stress, which we know that all athletes come encounter with, and mine was caused by 40 plus years of exercising and just basically being sore all the time, spinning out of control and not being able to be efficient. Well, we also know that if we drink redox single molecules, it actually clears out oxidative stress. So the cells and that have been stressed out create, and that picture I had there before is like a rusted chain. By drinking redox single molecules, it actually decreases oxidative stress within the body. So now we have, and I use this as a visual, after drinking redox molecules, it's like having a new internal side, because we know that oxidative stress is less and become more efficient. So it's a good visual. We also know that by drinking redox single molecules, it actually increases the antioxidants within our body, and that increases it by 800%. So that's where we have a better immune system. And so I have a picture of it actually working with antioxidants. So here's redox single molecules that go out and they take out the viruses or different chemicals within our body that make our body not be efficient. So again, an antioxidant going out and getting all what I call the bad guys and getting them out of. Now we have a healthier and more efficient immune system. And again, like I said, I haven't had a cold in 10 years. I've had a cold once, and before I was getting them 2 or 3 times a year. And then we also know that if we exercise, we actually produce more mitochondrions. Mitochondrions, within the mitochondrium is where we have our actual redox single molecules. So we have what we call type 1, type 2, which is positive and negative redox single molecules. So the ATP is an energy that activates the redox single in the mitochondrium. And I'll show you how that kind of a bird's eye view of how this happens. So you have your mitochondrions, and then you have your ATP, which is the energy, which is produced by moving. It then goes into the mitochondrium itself. It finds the redox single molecules, attaches to them, and actually activates them. So we know that if we have the more mitochondrions we have within our body, which is a power pack of our body, or within our body, then the more energy we can produce. And then I started using the Renew 28. And again, what we talked about is I was sore all the time, so I started using it with quads during workouts. And I was able to increase the blood flow to that area so that I was actually more efficient in my workouts. So I use it right before I go swimming, before I go running, because I'm increasing the blood flow to that area. And then we also talked about red blood cells, which also increases our white blood cells. And now I have a more efficient immune system because I'm increasing the blood flow to the area needed during athletic competition or training. This is a test that I actually did with a gentleman here locally. And this is something that's I haven't shown to too many people because they wouldn't understand it, but you guys would. And we talked about lactic buildup. And the way this test was done is that there was a device, it almost looks like a blood sugar device, and they actually took blood from our earlobes and then put it on a strip and then put it in the machine to measure what my lactic acid was at the time. So what we did is we compared a 19-year-old swimmer and myself. We actually swam in the same pool side by side. In this test, what it did is we would swim a distance, and then we would draw the blood and put it into the machine and determine what our lactic acid buildup was. Now, the way we determine the lactic acid, it tells us a number. But when we start seeing a decrease in the lactic acid, then we know the body is recovering. So the idea in this test period was if your lactic acid does not drop, then you're still building up lactic acid. That's where we have soreness and fatigue. So what we were able to do is determine that because of at this time I was 55 years old compared to a 19-year-old. And what it was able to do, because I had been on the redox molecules for 3 years at that time, is that I was able to clear out my lactic acid more efficiently than a 19-year-old swimmer saying the same. He was a faster swimmer than I was. So, but we were still trying to figure it out. Also, it determined what my heart rate was. So you can see in the first test, we swam a 500-yard swim, and I did it in 5 minutes and 57 minutes, and he did it in, we did a 6-minute swim. So after the 6-minute swim, we then took our heart rate, and you can see my heart rate was actually 118. The 19-year-old boy's heart rate was 175. So we swam the same time, but my heart rate was less, and his heart rate was higher. My lactic acid was at 5.2, his was at 3.9, which just means that I was building up lactic acid, but my heart was actually lower. Then we waited 15 minutes, and then we swam again, the second swim. And then you can see the times. I was 1:47, he was 5:54, so another 6-minute swim. My heart rate was 135, his heart rate was 185, so he had a higher heart rate. And now you can see where my lactic acid was at 8.3, but 3 minutes later, my lactic acid dropped. So because of it dropping, I didn't have to test again because I was actually clearing out the lactic acid at a much efficient rate. the 19-year-old gentleman, his did not start dropping until 5 minutes later. So I was actually more efficient at 3 minutes. It took him 5 minutes to clear out his. It only took me 3 minutes. And then the last test, you can see where we swam a 100-yard dash as fast as we could. And my heart rate was 140. The 19-year-old was 190. My lactic acid, and again, this is a test within a half-hour period. So my lactic acid was actually at 8.9. His was at 10.7. So he actually was building up more lactic acid after 30 minutes of working out than I was. And then I went to 9.8. He went to 12.2. And then it took me 7 minutes before at the 7-minute mark, I actually started dropping. And you can see with the gentleman, his was still going up. So again, I was being more efficient at 20 minutes. I was less lactic acid buildup than the 19-year-old. So I thought it was a good test to show you guys on a more efficient. And again, this was we were drawing blood every time we did a test. They were drawing it and put it into a system. So it was on the spot results. And so this is a lactic acid buildup. Real efficient for athletes because this is a real important. If we have less lactic acid buildup in an athlete, they're going to be less prone to injuries and being more efficient with their workout and their athletic performance. And then here's a lady real quick. She's 88 years old, started drinking the product. And here's her mileage she did on a bike within one year of riding the stationary bike. She did over 2,000 yards at 88 years old. This is her running at 88 years old on one of our machines that we have at our anti-gravity machine that we have at our facility. I just want to throw that in there real quick. Okay, so then I'll talk about Brendan. So Brendan is the gentleman we talked about before. He was an AVIC athlete before his injury, but at 18 years old, he had a traumatic car accident. He was in a coma for 49 days. He was in the hospital for 9 months. He was then sent home his parents took him home, and he needed 24/7 care. He couldn't walk, he couldn't sit up, he couldn't ambulate, he couldn't do anything. Then we got a C on board, he fought back, and he's now fully recovered. And I'm going to explain how that happened with Brendan. So here's a before and after picture of Brendan. He had broken his neck, he had broken several bones, he had a traumatic brain injury, and he was a mess. And the reason I can talk about this is because I was actually his physical therapist. I'm actually the one that actually worked with him and rehabbed him back to where he is today. So here's Brendan in his first attempt walking upstairs. Remember, he couldn't even walk or ambulate. He is without any devices walking up a flight of stairs. So Brendan, then we got him on the redox single molecules. He started drinking the molecules, and he started drinking them 2 weeks after he got home from the hospital, after being in hospital for 9 months. So we know that it passed through the cell membrane. We then activated the cells that were dormant because he had been in the hospital so long he wasn't able to even move. So we actually had to get him moving again, get his cells start firing again so they could communicate. He had no communication within the cells, or very little, I should say. And so activating those cells so that they can now be able to get him to start moving his arm again, start moving his legs again, start sitting up again. And we talked about this. So cell communication was the first thing that we got that Brendan started working with. And then the cells again started detecting, repairing, and replacing. So here's how the cells actually communicate with each other. So we know that healthy cells communicate at a much higher rate, and then they can detect, repair. The other thing is that redox single molecules, the atoms are only 4 atoms wide. So with Brendan, that's a big thing, because when you don't have brain communication or lack of brain communication, we need to have the atoms to be able to pass through the cell membrane. And with redox single molecules, 4 atoms large, or the chain is, so it actually can go across the cell membrane of the brain and actually communicate. So Brendan wasn't able to talk, he wasn't able to communicate. So by drinking redox single molecules, we actually were able to get the atoms to cross the cell membrane and actually start getting some cell or the brain to start communicating. So in the brain itself, in order for Brendan to get better, we have to get those atoms across the cell membrane into the brain itself to be able to communicate. And these are some synapses that are able, cells are actually starting to talk with each other. So we were actually able to wake up the brain itself and get it to start communicating. So then he started opening his eyes, he started moving his arms, his legs, he started going from seated to standing to walking. The other thing is that Brendan had a lot of tissue damage. And so with the body, by introducing the redox molecules, it's that the body actually goes into what we call cell suicide, which is up. This is a process in which the body has to be able to in order to maintain a healthy tissue, it actually create room for that to happen. And so what was happening in Brendan's case is that there was no room for the new cells to go in, because there was all these cells that were damaged that need to be replaced. And so what you'll see is that the body started making room for healthy cells to come in. And so once it made the room, so you can see where where the redox single molecules gets rid of the bad cells and allows the body to actually put healthy cells in that area. So with Brendan, we unlocked the genetic pathways. Again, he was living off a feeding tube, so he was able to get off the feeding tube, so his digestive system became more efficient. Inflammation, so he had a lot of inflammation from the trauma of the injury, and this would apply to athletes too. And he was an avid athlete himself. We know that his cardiovascular system got better because he was able to tolerate physical therapy sessions and workout sessions more efficiently. And then his immune system became more efficient.
Yeah, just waking up in the morning and to be well. Quite honest with you, I ain't really sleep well. You ever feel like your train of thought's been derailed? That's when you press on, lean in. There goes the fire. There goes the fire. Here comes the fire. That's what they say to me, say to me, say to me. This one's a fighter. And if I could last 30 rounds, there's no reason you should ever have your head down.
Brendan graduated from college. He's got a bachelor's in microbiology, is now in pre-med school. And again, 7 years ago, they said he would walk, talk, and he would be a vegetable, and here he is now. So very excited for him every time I see this video. Makes me pretty emotional because this guy's come a long ways. Okay, so we also know that you are what you digest. So we know that eating healthy and exercise is what the key component is to having a healthier life. And this is also a key component with athletes. These athletes have to be able to have proper diet. We also know that by taking ASEA, that it activates the cells, and then have proper nutrition to feed the cells and activate the cells. If you have a healthy cell, you still need to feed it and give it proper nutrition. And then your cells, you have to be active also. So these are the three components in order to have a healthier lifestyle, but also the components that athletes on a daily basis strive. I have one more short video.
A breakthrough brought us together. A piece of the puzzle fell into place, and we were the ones to notice it, to act on it, to build on it, to follow its lead. Like life, it carved a path, a trail for future use and further discovery. We've seen where wellness begins, and it's in the cells. We've watched wellness at work, and it's a journey, a constant relay across networked pathways. We've put the unprecedented into people's hands, and it's changed lives at the genetic level. The path continues, its connections grow, boundaries step back, and the door opens wider on cellular support, with nutrition built for the new Redox reality.